Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat, and with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other worlds. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
Welcome, listeners, viewers, and readers from America and across the world. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio, and as always, I thank all of you for taking the time to join us this evening. As always, we have a very interesting show lined up for you, and it's kind of a continuation of what I've been doing for the past 3 weeks in bringing forth the Genesis narrative and speaking about the timeline of creation from what is the first 4 days of the creation week. And it's to give you an understanding as to what is really still veiled within the creation account. And it's to help you to better understand what had occurred and why it is that those of us that have studied and looked into, examined the creation week, we've come to understand the biblical cosmology in a different manner than what we are taught, what we are indoctrinated into with regard to Copernican, the whole ever-expanding model for universe. And so this evening will be a follow-up on that, and I'll be talking about the first 4 days of creation from what will be some other books that I also covered in the Vaulted Dome of the Earth, my 10th book, the Firmament Vaulted Dome of the Earth, because in that book, and I start with in the first few chapters, excuse me, as to why it is we cannot trust NASA. And basically, in the Orion project, an engineer named Kelly Price, I believe it is, he lets you know in a video that NASA sponsored and released themselves on the Orion project that they're not able to, and even in this day and age, to get out past what is the Van Allen radiation belts. And because of that, they're not able to go to Mars, and yet they claim to have gone back and forth to the moon multiple times back in the 60s when the technology was not even what it is now. And so they shot themselves in the foot, and now we understand that the whole mission to the moon, the Apollo missions, the so-called back and forth, their landing and coming back, that all of that was unachievable, and it is still unachievable. In fact, they said that the only way they could protect the astronauts is by encasing the lunar module in lead. And just doing that, if you were to encase the lunar module in lead, it would be so heavy that it could not lift off the ground. or would be uncontrollable in the manner that the so-called rockets, which don't even go up into so-called space, but curve outward towards the horizon, that they could not create a mission where astronauts could survive going past such deadly radiation. And so, understanding and becoming aware that NASA has basically defrauded the American taxpayer for millions and billions and trillions of dollars over the course of the many decades that we've been duped into supporting them, that in order to really get an idea for how the creation was established and how it came into being, really, in my opinion, the only trustworthy source to study for such understanding is the prophetic word. And so that's what I did. And I, being a student of the ancient manuscripts, I began to revisit a lot of the texts I had read previously with new understanding and with new light. And just as I had revisited the book of Enoch, the courses of the heavenly luminaries, to now understand the motions of the luminaries in creating the different aspects of the calendar system, I began to revisit all of the books that I could remember, which had included within them the narrative of the creation week, especially the first 7 days of creation. Well, we know that, the entirety of the heavens and the earth were established and completed and filled and inhabited with the different creatures that occupy the various elements and that make their life within them, the water, the air, and that live upon the earth. That all of this is described within the first 7 days of creation, including that of the creation of humanity and being made in the image of our Maker. And so, in, I believe it's chapter 3 or 4, in the vaulted dome of the earth, I take all these different stories, parallel them one after the other in breakdown over the first 4 days of the creation week, speaking about the establishment of the earth as the circular foundation inscribed upon the waters of the deep, upon a square that has 4 corners. And then on the second day, the vaulted dome, the firmament, the rakia, which is a solid extended surface being fitted to it. The third day, also on the second day, that the waters above and the waters below are divided by this rakia. And then in the third day, you have the waters collected, creating the oceans of the world, that it covered all the dry land. And so on the third day, the Most High elevated the dry land above what is sea level. And then on the fourth day, he placed into the tabernacle of the atmosphere and what we call outer space the heavenly luminaries, the sun, the moon, the stars, and the planets, the wandering stars, and established them in what we see as the constellations making up the 12 houses of the zodiac. And so these first 4 days are key in what we believe to be the establishment of the universal order, without yet the creatures that were then established for inhabitation upon the earth and in the air, in the waters. And so today I'm going to bring forth some of the parallels from the many accounts that I included within that particular book. And I've already, over the past 2 weeks, gone over the Chronicles of Jeremiah, and then last week, the Legends of the Jews. This week, I'm going to cover Jubilees, the Book of the Secrets of Enoch, the Cave of Treasures, and Flavius Josephus, because most of these are short accounts. And so I do believe we should be able to cover all of them this evening. Now, in the firmament vaulted dome of the earth, you'll find not only these particular manuscripts and the parallel first 4 days of creation from them, but also the King James being the first and the foundation for the narrative, and then the Targum and the Jewish Bible. And then you have Jasher, Jubilees, the Book of the Secrets of Enoch, the Chronicles of Jeremiah, the Cave of Treasures, the Book of the Bee, and Flavius Josephus. I believe it's all of those accounts which I put together in one timeline to fill in the blanks and in the puzzle of truth to help you to understand what exactly occurred and how it occurred. And this evening, covering these 4 narratives, it will also give you a greater understanding as to how all things were established. And also remember that in reviewing the Genesis text, chapters 1, and then also 1, 2, you see that the earth in chapter Genesis 1, 2 had somehow became destroyed, and it was an indistinguishable ruin, so that the remaining verses following thereafter, we see that the creation is reestablished. And so what the Bible is speaking about is in Genesis is actually what I call the second world age. And it's during the last 6,000 years that we see the majority of what is the timeline of modern humanity. But know that even previous to this world age and the destruction, the Katabol, which led to the destruction of this world age, that it was previously made perfect, and that the creation had already been established in perfection and harmony and in similarity as to what we see now, in my opinion. But that, because God didn't just, create a whole another plan and create, even though the stature and the creatures, the size and the lifespans are different in this world age, being reduced, but still, as far as the conceptualization and the establishment of the creation in the first world age, that it was similar in some ways, in that there were creatures that flew in the air, that lived in the water, and that also inhabited and grew upon the land and within the land. We see also that there were hominids. There were some type of hominid living during that world age, and that there were also giants present upon the earth in those times. And so we see that in this world age, that the pre-Adamites and also modern humanity through Adam and Eve were already were established here as well before the seventh day of rest. And so, and God established the creation before this in similarity, other than, as I said, we have beings of very much larger stature and who lived very much longer lifespan. And so understanding this, it then helps one to make sense of what we are now discovering with regard to the antediluvian world and the size of the beings and even the creatures, even the ferns and the insects and the different creatures that lived during that time, that they were what we would call gigantic. And this whole idea of that the earth and the creatures and the statures and the lifespans of the beings living on the earth have been reduced is contrary to evolution and the whole Darwinian theme of we started from something of, some kind of primordial soup, and that beginning in a single cell amoeba type uh, creature, that we evolved to become independent, the different creatures that we see scattered upon the face of the earth, and which preoccupy the various different places and the different homelands, all across the plane of the earth. And so this evening we're going to be speaking about that. Let me log in here to the chat. And if you have questions, know to just place them somewhere near the end. And I'll be stopping for commentary as we go through this narrative. But as I said, I'll be reading first from the book of Jubilees, then the book of the secrets of Enoch, and then the cave of treasures, and then the accounts written by Flavius Josephus. And it'll be the same way over the first 4 days, and we'll go through the 4 days of creation, one after the other, after the other, with these four various testaments. And that should give us, it should be plenty of information to fill this time segment. All right, let me get settled here. All right, the book of Jubilees, chapter 2. And the angel of the presence spake to Moses according to the word of the Lord, saying, write the complete history of the creation, how in 6 days the Lord God finished all his works and all that he created. and kept Sabbath on the seventh day, and hallowed it for all ages, and appointed it as a sign for all his works. For on the first day he created the heavens which are above, and the earth and the waters, and all the spirits which serve before him. Now remember, when I have taught you and explained pre-existence, that all the spirits were created on the first day, including what would later become humanity. And all the spirits which serve before him, the angels of the presence, and the angels of sanctification, and the angels of the spirit of fire, and the angels of the spirit of the winds, and the angels of the spirit of the clouds, and of darkness, and of snow, and of hail, and of hoarfrost, and the angels of the voices, and of the thunder, and of the lightning, and the angels of the spirits of cold, and of heat, and of winter, and of spring, and of autumn, and of summer, and all the spirits of his creatures which are in the heavens and on the earth. He created the abysses and the darkness, eventide and night, and the light, dawn and day, which he hath prepared in the knowledge of his heart. And thereupon we saw his works, and praised him, and lauded before him on account of all his works. For 7 great works did he create on the first day. Now, I want to bring up a couple things before we move, just to highlight some of these teachings as they are revealed. First, notice that all of the various elements and the different aspects of creation, they all have angels connected to them, which, in my opinion, what this shows is that every aspect of creation has consciousness and is intelligent in some manner and awake, aware, and alive. And that even though we don't think of or consider the creation in such manner, that in my opinion, because everything comes from light, and basically Christ is that light, and the Godhead, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, as the motherly aspect and the feminine aspect of the creation, that everything is alive and is a part of what is the fabric of creation and reality. And that fabric steps down in vibration from what is light, pure light, that the purest light is Christ. And it's that Christ within us that gives everything substance, everything heat, consciousness, that sound, and even physical creation, physical dimensionality, 3 dimensionality. It all has as source Christ as the force of all light and life. And so here we see everything was manifest on the first day. And even all the spirits of his creatures which are in the heavens and on the earth. And so when he says creatures, that includes humanity and all of the animals. And so, in my opinion, animals have spirit and soul, just as humans do. And they're not just, you know, um, zombie like creatures, but even, and there have been tests done where plants react to sound and to intent and to the words that are said and the feelings which are conveyed around them. And, plants are living material as well. And I do believe that they are conscious beings. Of course, many people are going to say that I'm nuts, but not that they don't already. So who cares, right? So, anyways, and then notice here that in the last two verses, he says, He created the abyss and the darkness, which the abysses, that is where the bottomless pit, Sheol, that is where Legion, Lucifer, and the rebel angels abide. And it's their domain, that the place of the wicked is within the interior of the earth in what is called the abyss. And then it says eventide and night, which is evening and night. And so we're told here that darkness and that portion of the day is from um, the or what is night, that the aspect of the darkness is a part of what is the 24-hour day, but that darkness begins at evening and continues through night until the next verse, and the light, which is from dawn to day, which day is when evening tide begins. So when the sun sets. So daytime, as Christ says that there's 12 hours of day, and that Sabbath is celebrated from dawn to dusk. And then darkness, the hours of darkness, are from evening or twilight, which is sunset, to night, or what would begin morning, which is sunrise, which he hath prepared in the knowledge of his heart. And thereupon we saw all his works and praised him. Now notice, and thereupon we saw his works. In Job, it says that the morning stars shouted for joy. And so this is the moment when the light, when it says, and the light, dawn and day, which he hath prepared in the knowledge of his heart. Again, that light is Christ. And so when Christ was called forth, the Father said, let there be light. That light was Christ. The universe came into visibility. And the angels, we, as part of the Morning Star administration, as part of the sons of God that existed as the angels created on the first day, that we saw the creation lit up for the first time, and everybody shouted for joy. All the angels shouted for joy. All the morning stars shouted for joy. And so and thereupon we saw his works and praised him, and lauded before him on account of all his works. For 7 great works did he create on the first day. And so the angel, is telling Moses that we, which we includes him and the angel. And so he's basically telling him that you pre-existed with us, you were witness to all of this, and we all shouted for joy. We lauded before him on account of all his works. And so, again, that includes all of us. All right, continuing. The Cave of Treasures. In the beginning, on the first day, which was the holy first day of the week, the chief and firstborn of all the days, God created the heavens and the earth and the waters and the air and the fire and the hosts, which are invisible. That is to say, the angels, archangels, thrones, lords, principalities, powers, cherubim, and seraphim, and all the ranks and companies of spiritual beings, and the light and the night and the daytime, and the gentle winds and the strong winds, all these were created on the first day. And on the first day of the week, the Spirit of holiness, one of the persons of the Trinity, which this is the Spirit of holiness is Sophia wisdom. She is the Holy Spirit. One of the persons of the Trinity hovered over the waters, and through the hovering thereof over the face of the waters were blessed so that they might become producers of offspring. And they became hot, and the whole nature of the waters glowed with heat, and the leaven of creation was united to them. As the mother bird maketh warm her young by the embrace of her closely covering wings, and the young birds acquire from form through the warmth of the heat which they derive from her, so through the operation of the Spirit of holiness, the Spirit, the Paraclete, the leaven of the breath of life was united to the waters when he hovered over them. It should be she there. But again, after the Greek Septuagint and after um, the Western Orthodox churches changed the Holy Spirit to being a he, uh, it has been corrupted ever since. But if you look at and examine the ancient Hebrew and also the ancient Aramaic, you will see, and even in our modern English Bibles, in the King James, in Proverbs, the whole chapter of Proverbs, and especially in the apocryphal texts, you'll see that the Holy Spirit is revealed as being a she, which is why in this portion, uh, describing the mother bird as a her, that's what it's referring to, because the Holy Spirit is a she. But again, even in this translation, it's corrupted at the very end. Same thing as what occurred in the Greek translations. But the word that is translated in John, as where Christ says that the Comforter, that he will come to you, that word is ekionos, and it means he, she, or it. And so, even in the Greek, if you look at the origins, the context of the words, you will see that the variability is still present within that translation, even though they bring it forth as he, but it's non-gendered in reality. Non-gendered according to sexual association, that gender in spiritual matters has nothing to do with um, the sexual orientation that we see that in the human aspect of mortal form that gender has identity with. But certainly, being a comfort or comforting or brooding over the waters, that this is as a mother hen would do, that this is something that is personified in the feminine aspect. All right, continuing the notes on this particular chapter. It says, according to Solomon, a Nestorian bishop of Parat Shah of Al Basra, which is a city in Iraq, a city on the right bank of the Shat al Arab, about AD 1222, The creation of the heavens and the earth has been planned from everlasting in the immutable mind of God. He created seven substances or natures in silence, without voice: heaven, earth, water, air, fire, the angels, and darkness. The earth was plunged in the midst of the waters. Above the waters was air, and above the air was fire. Water is cold and moist, air is hot and moist, fire is hot and dry. But it had no luminosity until the fourth day, when the luminaries were created. The angels are divided into 9 classes and 3 orders. The upper order contains the cherubim, seraphim, and thrones, and these are the bearer of God's throne. The middle order contains the Lord's powers and rulers. The lower order contains the principalities, archangels, and angels. And the cherubim are in intellectual motion, the seraphim a fiery motion, the thrones are a fixed motion, the lords are a motion which governs the motions beneath it and controls the devils. The powers are a motion which give effect to God's will. The rulers are a motion which rule spiritual measures, and the sun, moon, and stars. The principalities are a motion which rule the elements. The archangels are a swift operative motion which governs every living creature except man. And the angels are a motion which has spiritual knowledge of everything which is in heaven and on the earth. The guardian angel of every man belongs to this last class. The number of each class of angels is equal to the number of all mankind, from Adam to the resurrection. So you see, we have a guardian angel with all of us. And that is our higher aspect of who we are. That is our conscience, and it indwells within us. That's the spirit of who we are. That's the spirit that gave our body heat, our breath moisture, and our senses touch, sight, taste, hearing, and seeing. And they minister to their God there, being invisible to bodily eyes. The angels are not self existent beings, they were created. On the other hand, darkness is a self existent nature or substance. Solomon of Al-Basra does not accept the view that the spirit which hovered over the waters was the Holy Spirit, even though it was. But that's the notes that are with the cave, no, the Book of Jubilees, no, it's the Book of Jubilees, yes. All right. Now, the book of the secrets of Enoch. And the Lord summoned me and said to me, Enoch, sit down on my left, and with Gabriel. And I bowed down to the Lord, and the Lord spake to me, Enoch, beloved, all thou seest, all things that are standing finished, I tell to thee, even before the very beginning, all that I created from non-being, and visible things from invisible. Hear, Enoch, and take in these my words, for not to my angels have I told my secret, and I have not told them their rise nor my endless realm, nor have they understood my creating, which I tell thee today. For before all things were visible, I alone used to go about in the invisible things, like the sun, from east to west, and from west to east. So he's saying that he used to wander around in a circle. But even the sun has peace in itself, while I found no peace because I was creating all things. And I conceived the thought of placing foundations and of creating visible creation. And so Christ is the invisible, and only He, the Father and the Holy Spirit, existed as everything at one time. And then it says that, well, you'll see. I commanded in the very lowest parts that visible things should come down from the invisible. And Adonai came down very great, and I beheld him, and lo, he had a belly of great light. And I said to him, Become undone, Adiel, and let the visible come out of thee. And he became undone, and a great light came out. And I was in the midst of the great light. And as there is born light from light, there came forth a great age, and showed all creation which I had thought to create. And I saw that it was good. And I placed for myself a throne, and took my seat on it, and said to the light, Go thou up higher, and fix thyself high above the throne, and be a foundation to the highest things. And above the light there is nothing else. And then I bent up and looked up from my throne. So the light of lights is established in the height of heights. And this is where the throne. So God established what is above the vaulted dome of the earth first, which includes paradise. He created his realm, which is light, the invisible, the ethereal, spiritual. And it is from the spiritual and invisible and the ethereal that the perishable and material and what is visible came into being, as we will see. And I summoned the very lowest a second time. So now he's creating what is below the vaulted dome. Let Arcus come forth hard, and he came forth hard from the invisible. And Arcus came forth hard and heavy and very red. And I said, Be opened, Arcus, and let there be born from thee. And he came undone, and age came forth, very grave and very great and very dark, bearing the creation of all lower things. And I saw that it was good, and said to him, Go thou down below, and make thyself firm, and be for a foundation for the lower things. And it happened, and he went down and fixed himself, and became the foundation for the lower things, and below the darkness there is nothing else. And so he's establishing the earth and Sheol. And I commanded that there should be taken from light and darkness. And I said, Be thick, and it became thus. And I spread it out with the light, and it became water. And I spread it out over the darkness below the light. And then I made firm the waters, that is to say, the bottomless. So here he's telling you that the two divisions of the waters above and the waters that were gathered below, that became the oceans. And I made foundation of light around the water, and created 7 circles from inside. So here, the foundation of light, that is the firmament. And the firmament divides the waters from the water. And he created 7 circles from it. It's these 7 circles that the 7 planets, the moon, the sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter, have fixed their orbits, as you'll see. And created 7 circles from inside, and imagined it, the water, like crystal, wet and dry, which we know that the firmament is a semi-precious crystalline structure, and it's impenetrable. Like crystal, wet and dry, that is to say, like glass, and the circumcision of the waters and the other elements. And I showed each one of them its road, and the 7 stars, each one of them in its heaven, that they go thus. And I saw that it was good. So here he says he established the firmament, and he established the 7 tabernacles for the stars. And I separated between light and between darkness. That's the firmament, because the light is the spiritual worlds which are above the firmament, and the darkness is the lower, the visible worlds, the perishable worlds. That is to say, in the midst of the water hither and thither. And I said to the light that it should be the day, and to the darkness that it should be the night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And so we have the foundation, the earth, and the waters above and below. And this is from Flavius Josephus on the first day. In the second day, we'll see that it speaks a great deal about the establishment of the firmament. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, but when the earth did not come into sight, but was covered with thick darkness, and a wind moved upon its surface, God commanded that there should be light. And when that was made, he considered the whole mass, and separated the light and the darkness, and the name he gave to one was night, and the other he called day. And he named the beginning of light and the time of rest, the evening and the morning. And this was indeed the first day. All right, the second day from the book of Jubilees. And on the second day he created the firmament in the midst of the waters. And the waters were divided on that day. Half of them went up above, and half of them went down below the firmament. And that was in the midst over the face of the whole earth. And this was the only work God created on the second day. From the Cave of Treasures. And on the second day God made the lower heaven and called it Rakia. That is to say, what is solid and fixed, or the firmament. This he did that he might make known that the lower heaven did not possess the nature of the heaven which is above it, and that it is different in appearance from that heaven which is above it. For the heaven above it is of fire. And that second heaven is Nura, or light, and this lower heaven is Darpishian. And because it hath the dense nature of water, it hath been called Rakia. And on the second day God made a separation between the waters and the waters, that is to say, between the waters which were above the Rakia and the waters which were below. And the ascent of these waters which were above heaven took place on the second day, and they were like unto a dense black cloud of thick darkness. Thus were they raised up there, and they mounted up, and behold, they stand above the Rakia in the air, and they do not spread, and they make no motion to any side. The notes. According to the book of the Bee, the creation of the firmament enabled God to allot a dwelling place to the angels, where also the souls of the righteous could be received after the general resurrection. The great abyss of water which God created on the first day was divided by him into 3 parts. One part he left on the earth for the use of man and beast, and to form rivers and seas. The second part he made the firmament, and the third part the place above the firmament. And after the resurrection of all these parts will return to their original state. The word derpician is of difficulty. I cannot explain it. The variant form is durikikon. Okay, we don't need to know that, but all right, the book of the secrets of Enoch, day 2. And then I made firm the heavenly circle. This is the firmament. and made that the lower water which is under heaven collect itself together into one whole. These are the oceans of the world. And the chaos become dry. This is the dry land being elevated above sea level. And it became so. Out of the waters I created rock, hard and big. And from the rock I piled up the dry. And the dry I called earth. And the midst of the earth I called abyss. That is to say, the bottomless. I collected the sea in one place and bound it together with a yoke. And I said to the sea, Behold, I give thee thy eternal limits, and thou shalt not break loose from thy component parts. And thus I made fast the firmament. This day I called me the first created. Okay. Yeah, this also talks about the fall of Lucifer. I'll read that. It is also part of the book of the secrets of Enoch. And for all the heavenly troops I imagined the image and essence of fire. And my eye looked at the very hard, firm rock. And from the gleam of my eye the lightning received its wonderful nature, which is both fire and water and fire. And one does not put out the other, nor does the one dry up the other. Therefore, the lightning is brighter than the sun, softer than water, and firmer than hard rock. And from the rock I cut off a great fire, and from the fire I created the orders of the incorporeal 10 troops of angels. And their weapons are fiery, and their raiment a burning flame. And I commanded that each one should stand in his order. And one from out of the order of angels, having turned away with the order that was under him, conceived an impossible thought to place his throne higher than the clouds above the earth, that he might become equal in rank to my power. And I threw him out from the height with his angels, and he was flying in the air continuously above the bottomless. And so you see that on the second day, Lucifer and the order of the seraphic angels which were underneath him were cast out of the heavens for conceiving an impossible thought to place his throne higher than the clouds above the earth, which is Isaiah 14. I will exalt my throne above the stars and the clouds of God. I will establish my throne above the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will be like the Most High. And for that, it says, and I threw him out to the bottomless pit. So check that out, Isaiah 14. All right. We're going to stop here because I don't want to have to rush through the book of the bee, even though I probably could read it. But we'll pick this up on the other side, and I'll check the chat rooms, and if you have questions or commentary. All right. Okay. I will be back in just a few short bits, and we'll pick it up.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revelation Radio. And we will pick it up on the second day with the Cave of Treasures, I believe. No, the Book of the Bee. I already read the Cave of Treasures. And so this is the Book of the Bee on the firmament. On the evening of the second day of the week, God willed to divide the heavens from the earth, that there might be luminaries and stars beneath the heavens to give light to this world, and that the heavens might be a dwelling place for the righteous and the angels after the resurrection. God said, "Let there be a firmament which shall divide the waters from the waters." And straightway the waters were divided into three parts. One part remained upon the earth for the use of men, cattle, winged fowl, the rivers and the seas. Of another part God made the firmament. And the third part he took above the firmament. But on the day of resurrection, the waters will return to their former nature. Flavius Josephus. After this, on the second day, he placed the heaven over the whole world and separated it from the other parts. And he determined it should stand by itself. He also placed a crystalline firmament round it, and he put it together in a manner agreeable to the earth, and fitted it for giving moisture and rain, and for affording the advantage of dews. Now, this is interesting. There's a whole lot packed into these 5 sentences here from Flavius Josephus. First, notice he placed the heaven over the whole world. So, how do you do that if the earth is a globe or a ball? Yeah, some would say, oh, you surround it, but, you know, covered over, that's sort of like the pot, you know, uh, the cover, a pot in its cover. And which is exactly what it says in the Legends of the Jews and the Chronicles of Jeremiah, which I read from previously. And he placed a crystalline firmament, which again, the firmament, so many people will say that, there is no firmament, it just means expanse or the atmosphere, but that it has no solid structure. But it's clear within the scriptures that the firmament is a crystalline structure. It's an impenetrable, solid, indestructible structure. And that this is what also polarizes and gives us the effect of rainbows, as well as sundogs, and the halo that we see, the rainbow halo around the sun, reflective off of the firmament. And on some days it becomes so clear, a giant ring around the sun, and how anybody can miss that is just beyond me. But again, when you're raised in indoctrination which is based upon lies, and you're not taught these things, even seeing them over and over daily, still they do not make sense because we're trying to filter it through our heliocentric worldview. And because of that, even though all of us have been, well, I would say most of us probably have been to the oceans, have sat on the beach, have watched the sunsets on water, and seeing a pillar of light all the way out to where the sun, the waves, the sun rays are gleaming like diamonds, like 1,000 diamonds, glittering off and dancing on the waves of the ocean. We see it all the way from where the sun is setting in the water to where we are on the beach, and that it even glistens off the moisture of the sand. And it's a huge beam and pillar of light, and it's unbroken, meaning that there's no curvature, and that between our eyesight and where the sun is setting way out there, which is just disappearing from view, having reached the point of disappearance, that we see the light all the way from it to our eyes, meaning that it's completely flat, and that the oceans in every direction is completely flat. The surface of the water is completely flat, no curvature, because there is no curvature. And that's the easy way to determine that the earth is not a globe or spherical in nature, which even the properties of water negate the possibility that it could adhere to a ball or take on some kind of curved form. And so, I mean, those two things alone, the fact that water can never settle in a curved shape, and that it will always drain, uh, leak out until it is gathered in a basin and then will settle in a level, negate the whole premise that the earth is a ball. All right, continuing. The third day from the book of Jubilees. And on the third day he commanded the waters to pass from off the face of the whole earth into one place, and the dry land to appear. And the waters did so, as he commanded them, and they retired from off the face of the earth into one place outside of this firmament, and the dry land appeared. And on that day he created for them all the seas, according to their separate gathering places, and all the rivers and the gatherings of the waters and the mountains, and on the earth and all the lakes and all the dew of the earth, and the seed which is sown, and all the sprouting things, and fruit bearing trees and trees of the wood, and the garden of Eden, in Eden, and all the plants after their kind. These four great works God created on the third day. The cave of treasures. And on the third day God commanded the waters that were below the firmament, the rakia, to be gathered together in one place, and the dry land to appear. And when the covering of water had been rolled up from the face of the earth showed itself to be in an unsettled and unstable state. That is to say, it was of a damp or moist and yielding nature. And the waters were gathered together into seas that were under the earth, and within it, and upon it. And God made in the earth from below corridors, and shafts, and channels for the passage of the waters. And the winds which come from within the earth ascend by means of these corridors and channels. And also the heat and the cold for the service of the earth. Now, as for the earth, the lower part of it is like unto a thick sponge, for it resteth on the waters. And on this third day God commanded the earth, and it brought forth herbs and vegetables, and it conceived in its interior trees, and seeds, and plants, and roots. Here's the notes. On this day the waters gathered together in the depths of the earth, sand was set as a limit for the waters of the seas, and the mountains and hills appeared. The sages say that paradise was created on this day, but the rabbis held the view that it existed before the world. Solomon of Basra says that the earth produced herbs and trees by its own power, and that the luminaries had nothing to do with vegetable growth, as will be revealed in the book of the bee. All right, the book of the secrets of Enoch. It's a very short segment here. And on the third day I commanded the earth to make grow great and fruitful trees and hills, and seed to sow, and I planted paradise and enclosed it, and placed as armed guardians flaming angels, and thus I created renewal. Then came evening and came morning, the fourth day. From the book of the bee, of the creation of trees and plants, and the making of seas and rivers. On the third day God commanded that the waters should be gathered together into the pits and depths of the earth, that the dry land should appear. When the waters were gathered together into the depths of the earth, and the mountains and hills had appeared, God placed the sand as a limit for the waters of the seas, that they might not pass over and cover the earth. And God commanded the earth to put forth herbage and grass and every green thing, and the earth brought forth trees and herbs and plants of all kinds, complete and perfect in respect of flowers and fruits and seed, each according to its kind. Some say that before the transgression of the command, the earth was brought forth neither thorn nor briars, and that even the rose had no thorns as it has now. But that after the transgression of the command, the earth put forth thorns and briars, by reason of the curse which it had received. The reason why God created the trees and plants before the creation of the luminaries was that the philosophers whose discourse on natural phenomena might not imagine that the earth brought forth herbs and trees through the power of the heat of the sun. Which it is interesting that, before the sun was put into place, that the earth produced all these things. All right. Concerning the making of paradise, it is not mentioned in the Pentateuch on what day it was created, but according to the opinion of those who may be relied upon, it was made on the same day in which the trees were made, and if the Lord will, we will speak about it in its proper place. So, speaking of paradise, it also was established before the luminaries were put into their tabernacles. Flavius Josephus. On the third day, he appointed the dry land to appear, with the sea itself round about it, And on the very same day, he made the plants and the seeds to spring out of the earth. All right, we're already to the fourth day, which we're doing good. And like I said, we should be able to make it through these 4 days of creation. But the most important thing to understand about the third day is that when the firmament divided the waters of the waters from above and below, the waters below gathered together in ocean. And it was basically like you have a snow globe and then you have the water, but that's it. There was not yet any land. And the dry land was not yet visible. And when God made the dry land appear, it describes this in the book of the earth and also to the cosmology of the ancient peoples found worldwide that that the earth would be elevated, and it would initially be elevated as one big continent, and that it looked like a turtle shell, like a turtle shell, coming up out of the waters. And that's why the native peoples called it Turtle Island. The name for the earth was Turtle Island. And it's because not that the earth is spinning in orbit around the sun out in the middle of, the cosmic ocean, but that the island, the earth initially elevated above the waters of the sea or sea level, it looked like a turtle shell. And that is what science called Pangea. And it was this one huge island that at some point, and it could be when God destroyed Atlantis, or it could be when he decided to divide the tongues and the peoples, you know, after Nimrod's attempt at creating the Tower of Babel, that perhaps then, he split off the tribes and the tongues and separated peoples. I don't know exactly when that was, but according to the Book of the Earth, which brings forth the ancient stories of the cosmologies of the world, according to the native peoples and ancient peoples worldwide, they describe the earth being surrounded by the oceans. And even Enoch on the second day, he speaks about um, giving the oceans of the world and yoking them, and that the earth was elevated in this manner, as like the Turtle Island. And then later it separated into the various tribes and tongues and locations of the various nations of the world, and that these different peoples are ruled over, um, by, at that time, it was either Atlantis or Nimrod that was trying to create this new world order, and then God divided and separated the tongues and the tribes, and during Peleg's time, and that the earth was measured. Anyways, so the fourth day from the book of Jubilees. And on the fourth day he created the sun and the moon and the stars and set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon all the earth, and to rule over the day and the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God appointed the sun to be a great sign on the earth for days, and for Sabbaths, and for months, and for feasts and for years and for Sabbaths of years and for jubilees and for all seasons of the year. And it divided the light from the darkness, and for prosperity, that all things may prosper, which shoot and grow on the earth. These three kinds he made on the fourth day. All right, and so, in agreement, you'll see overwhelmingly in every creation narrative, the sun, the moon, and the stars are created on day 4 and set into orbit. Their circuits are under the firmament and above the face of the earth. Always. And so, how does that fit into the whole idea of planetary accretion? Which NASA says that, the whole universe was spinning and that the different stars came about and they're rotating, continuing. Rotating is what created the different galaxies, and that these different galaxies um, gathering dust and mass and then becoming lights and suns that they then spinning gathered around them the different planets, that these different planets then took orbits, and those that happened to be at the perfect existence uh, to be in the Goldilocks zone, that being at that extent, they were then able to randomly evolve life, not being too far away uh, to be too cold and not being too close to be too hot, but in perfection, that the temperature was such that life could evolve on those planets, which were, you know, that later came about after the stars and continuing to spin in the universal motion of uh, the orbital, the movement of all the luminaries around some grand universal center. How does that work when the Earth is older than the sun and the moon? Doesn't make sense. So certainly it's you either believe God's word or you believe NASA. You can't you can't tiptoe and try to merge both because they don't work together. The Cave of Treasures. And on the fourth day, God made the sun and the moon and the stars, and as soon as the heat of the sun was diffused over the surface of the earth became hard and rigid and lost its flaccidity. Because the humidity and the dampness caused by the waters were taken away from it, the Creator made the sphere of the sun of fire and filled it with light. And God gave unto the sphere of the moon and the stars bodies of water and air, and filled them with light. And when the dust of the earth became hot, it brought forth all the trees, plants, seeds, roots, and which had been conceived inside it on the third day. And so we see, here again, it tells us that the sun and the moon and the stars being created of water and light, they're not earth-like. They're luminous, but they are like what we see, the waves, the so-called lunar waves, or these different waves. They are like water, and that these particular entities or these particular beings, they have phenomena which cannot be explained should they be hard and earth-like. Not saying that all things, that there are some things that have different elemental property, but certainly the scriptures tell us that the luminaries are made of water and light and not that of the earth, which again is a confirming witness that the earth is something completely different from that of the stars, and that the stars are more spiritual and ethereal in nature, and that which is, if they were dense and earth-like, they couldn't stay in the sky. They would fall to the earth, because anything that has weight and substance is going to come crashing down to the earth. But we see that even moisture, clouds, and dew, that they can be suspended into the air. And so it would make sense that the luminaries are water and air, and that they are mixed with luminosity, light. The notes: the cases of the sun and the moon and the stars were made of aerial matter, after the manner of lamps, and God filled them with a mixture of fire, which had no light in it, and with light which had no heat in it. The path of the luminaries is beneath the firmament. They are not fixed, as the ignorant think, but are guided in the courses by the angels, because they are angels. The Ethiopians have a tradition that when the sun was first made, its light was 12 times as strong as it is today. The angels complained that the heat was too strong and that it hampered them in the performance of their duties, whereupon God divided it into 12 parts and took away 6 of these parts, and out of 3 of them he made the moon and the stars, and the other 3 he distributed among the waters, the clouds, and the lightnings. All right, the book of the secrets of Enoch. On the 4th day I commanded that there should be great lights on the heavenly circles. On the first uppermost circle I placed the stars Chrono meaning Cronus, which is Saturn. And on the second, Aphrodite meaning Venus. And on the third, Aries meaning Mars. And on the fifth, Zeus being Jupiter. And on the sixth, Hermes, which excuse me, Hermes is Mercury. And on the seventh, Lesser the moon, and adorned it with the lesser stars. Now, isn't that interesting? The lesser moon, which I take that to be the object which is described in the Vedic cosmology as being Ratu and Ketu. Those Rahu and Ketu, which are the objects, dark-bodied objects, which are not visible until an eclipse happens. And then these are the objects which come before the sun and the moon and which cause the eclipses. Which, I think it's interesting that this lesser moon is mentioned in the book of Enoch, or the second book of Enoch, the book of the secrets of Enoch. All right, and then it says, and on the lower I placed the sun for the illumination of day, and the moon and the stars for the illumination of night. The sun, that it should go accordingly to each animal, signs of the zodiac, 12, and I appointed the succession of the months, and their names and lives, their thunderings and their hour markings, how they should succeed. And then evening came and morning came, the fifth day. The book of the bee. On the making of the luminaries, which this is interesting. On the fourth day, God made the luminaries, the sun, the moon, and the stars of three substances: air, light, and fire. He took aerial material and prepared vessels like lamps and mixed fire with light and filled them. And because in the nature of fire there was no light, nor heat in that of light, the fire imparted heat to the light, and light gave luminosity to the fire. And from these two were the luminaries, sun, moon, and stars fabricated. Some say that the luminaries were made in the morning, that the sun was placed in the east and the moon in the west, while others say that they were made in the evening and that the sun was placed in the west and the moon in the east. And therefore the Jews celebrate the 14th in the evening. Others say that all the luminaries, when they were created, were placed in the east. The sun completed his course by day, while the moon waited until eventide and then began her course. The path of the luminaries is beneath the firmament, and they are not fixed as men have foolishly stated, but the angels guide them. Mar Isaac says the sun performs his course from east to west and goes behind the lofty northern mountains the whole night until he rises in the east. And the philosophers say that during the night the luminaries perform their course under the earth, which is not true, even though to us the sun setting, and if we're on water, setting into the water, it looks to us that it disappears until rising on the eastern horizon, our eastern horizon, in morning. And the reason being is because once it goes from east to west, then it will circle around in half a semicircle until reaching our eastern skies in the morning. And with sunrise, we begin a new day. But if you did not have that circular movement of the sun, I don't see how it could be possible that it could circle back around and rise in our eastern skies for morning and new day. It just would not be possible. And so the sun has to be circling, as it says it in the book of Enoch, which those two um, scriptures were key for helping me to discern and to decipher the entire courses on the heavenly luminaries, which is exactly what it says here. The sun performs his course from east to west and then goes behind the lofty northern mountains, meaning it's moving north, over the whole night until he rises in the east for morning. And so that again is a circle. Flavius Josephus. On the fourth day he adorned the heaven with the sun, the moon, and the other stars, and appointed them their motions and courses, that the vicissitudes of the seasons might be clearly signified. And so we see here that again, Flavius Josephus knew and understood that It's the sun, the moon, and the other stars which were appointed their courses, and that were given circuit above the face of the earth, which is again reason why we see in the story of Josephus, or not Josephus, but Joshua, in chapter 10, where he elongates the day, where God gives him the authority to elongate the day and preventing the sun from setting so that the slaughter of the wicked, and especially the giants that were haughty and proud and aligned against the Most High God, and that had, um, if it was the earth spinning which caused the sun to set and to rise, then why would Joshua be given command over the sun and the moon? It doesn't make sense. But when you know that, like the ancient prophets and the apostles and the other patriarchs of old, that it is the sun and the moon and the other luminaries which move in circle around not the sun, but around Polaris, the one fixed star of the celestial night, then it makes sense. And it also makes sense that God established this order to the creation so very long ago, and it has remained in similar, it has moved, all the luminaries move in similar orientation as they were first imparted by the Most High God to do so, and that they carry out such motions. And so I'll read a couple other quotes from some other texts just to confirm, um, as I said, that the earth is the foundation and that the luminaries move in circle above them. And we see confirmation of this from the time lapse videography of the star trails over a course of an evening, as well as the phenomena of the midnight sun. That the midnight sun, if you don't know, near the summer solstice in high northern latitudes near the Arctic Circle, that one can witness the sun moving east to west and then north to east in circle, that it's always been set up that way. And so again, the luminaries are moving in circle above the earth and not vice versa. From the Legends of the Jews. Though the heavens and the earth consist of entirely different elements, they were yet created as a unit, like the pot and its cover. The heavens were fashioned from the light of God's garment, and the earth from the snow under the divine throne. Thus one earth rises above the other, from the first to the seventh, and over the seventh earth the heavens are vaulted, from the first to the seventh, and the last of them attached to the arm of God. The seven heavens form a unity. The seven kinds of earth form a unity. And the heavens and the earth together also form a unity. In the speech that I'll be giving, I describe how it is that, so many, even in the book of Enoch, it speaks about how the luminaries move in circuit above the face of the earth. And so I'll read just a few of these passages, this to give you further confirmation as to how it is that the biblical cosmology establishes that the sun and the moon and the other stars and the luminaries are all moving in circle above the face of the earth, and that the earth, like Polaris, is motionless, fixed, and unmoving, completely stationary. From the book of Enoch first, in chapter 74, verses 4 through 9, it says, Uriel showed me the angel whom the Lord of glory appointed over all the luminaries of heaven and in the world, that they might rule in the face of the sky, and appearing over the earth, become conductors of the days and the nights, the sun, the moon, and the stars, and all the ministers of heaven, which make their circuit. The word circuit is the same word used as circle, with all the chariots of heaven. In other words, they make their orbits with all the chariots of heaven, which all move around Polaris. And Polaris being the one fixed star, that above it is where God has established his throne. And the heavenly temple, and the place of the righteous, New Jerusalem, the city of God, that it is above the vaulted dome, that in all of the visions where the prophets see God seated on his throne and rainbows and fire surrounding him, they see him seated upon a sea of glass. And this sea of glass is the vaulted dome. All right, continuing, just a couple more. The heavens are moved by his direction and obey him in peace. Day and night accomplish the course assigned to them by him without hindrance one to another. The sun and the moon and the dancing stars, according to his appointment, circle in harmony within the bounds assigned to them, without any swerving aside. First Clement, chapter 20, verses 1 and 3. Two more short ones. The sun looks down on everything with its light, and the work of the Lord is full of his glory. So the sun looks down upon everything. The sun is above us, whereas that could never work in a planetary system model where all the planets spinning in orbit around the sun, they are to the side of the sun, and the sun is never in orientation above them. And so again, it can only work in this cosmology. And finally, from Jubilees chapter 2, and the sun rose above them to prosper them, and above everything that was on the earth, everything that shoots out of the earth, and all fruit bearing trees and all flesh. So again, here the sun is above all of them. Now I'm going to end with these two verses from the book of Enoch. And it was these two verses that made me reconsider how and what Enoch was discussing as the motions of the luminaries. And when you read these particular chapters, you'll immediately, in the first chapter, chapter 71 on the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries, about the movement of the greater luminary, which is the sun, you'll see that it is described in this circular nature. It says the sun sets in heaven and returning by the north, which is exactly what it says in that other verse I just read from the book of the bee. Returning by the north to proceed towards the east is conducted so as to enter by that gate and illuminate the face of heaven. And so, where does the sun set? The sun sets in heaven, which is in the west, and returning by the north, which just like that other one says, it, except for it mentioned that the sun sets in the waters when we know it doesn't go down below the waters, but it actually just disappears from view and looks like it's descending into the ocean. But that over the course of night, it moves across the northern skies and then comes back for morning in our eastern horizon. And Enoch repeats this in chapter 77, verse 4, speaking about the lesser luminary and how it moves also, like the great luminary. They set, speaking about the sun and the moon here, they set, enter into the western gate, circuit by the north, and through the eastern gate go forth over the face of heaven. And so again, Enoch chapter 71 verse 8 and chapter 77 verse 4, those are the two passages which in that entire book describe and help you to visualize and understand that what Enoch is describing for his description of the motions of the luminaries and how they move over a course of the year, in every month of the season, in every day, and every quarterly Sabbath. They are connected to the movements of the sun and the moon as they circle in the sky, setting in the west, returning by the north, and then rising in the east. And so at the conference next week, which it's already here, it's crazy. This, which I won't be here next Wednesday. So, Mr. Rowe, if you're listening, I'm going to have you or the hijacker take over my show for that evening. I would greatly appreciate it. But I will be presenting how it was that I was able to decrypt the book of Enoch according to the description of these two motions. Also, tomorrow evening, Laurel Austin, well, I haven't asked her yet, but God willing, she's going to be joining me to speak about the book that we're releasing. It's basically my notes for the Flat Earth Convention. And it's my speech in long form, which when I say long form, 130 plus pages. And I had to condense that down to 45 minutes. So as you can imagine, I cut out probably 9/10 of the information that I had. And so I am given a very condensed, short presentation of the information that I would like to have shared over the course of the evening, but I only have 45 minutes. So, and so if people want the entirety of the speech and all the images that Laurel took of the first annual conference, then you'll find it in this particular book. And I just published it a week ago. It's available in both hard and softback form. You can find it at our website, sacredwordpublishing.net and .com. And for those that had visited and that Laurel had told you that we would be creating a book of her images, well, we have finally finished and are now making it available. And there's like 60 pages of photographs of all the people, the speakers, as well as the people that were in the crowd, and all those that she had met and that took images with her, with Laurel. And so you can find it in this particular book. It turned out really well, and the photos are of excellent quality, as um, you know, per routine of her work. And so do check that out. All right, everyone, God bless, and you can join us on Truth Frequency Radio tomorrow for that particular show. Hopefully we will see you next Wednesday in Denver, and God willing, we'll all be there together in safety and peace. And I pray that everybody be well and that we can all make it and have a good time and learn and educate and fellowship all at the same time. God bless all. Good night.
Listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.